All right, well, good morning, everyone. The topic today is gender equality in marriage. And I'm going to go first, and then my co-presenter, Candace, is going to have the powerful conclusion to this topic. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the material that we are going through. This is the, first I've got a short outline here of some topics we want to go through. The overview is that gender equality is a multifaceted concept. That's really the overview or the generalization that we can make about it. And today we're going to discuss how it works or could work in marriage. In part, gender equality is influenced by culture. There's a balancing of traditional roles and modern thinking. And we're going to be asking this morning, how can we make progress in that area? It's also part psychology. How does one partner exercise too much power or manipulation over the other? And it's also part communication. When one partner is submissive, how can they break through the barrier and start communicating on a topic that has been silent for too long? This is where both partners should have an equal voice and listen to each other. Item number one is about changes. Well, if the elements of life and the universe itself, if they were static, things would be easier to balance out or to fix problems. But life and everything, as we know, is constantly changing. This goes back to the concept in philosophy that was proposed by Heraclitus, who flourished in Greece about 500 BC. And he said that everything was changing all the time. In fact, he said the universe is governed by change. So we have to accept that the dynamics of marriage are going to be changing also. And we have cultural shifts. Think of how things were in the 1950s, and then they changed through 60s and 70s and 80s and so forth. Now, of course, in the modern time period, we also have a pandemic that is stressing us out. It influences our finances and our health. And that's on top of all the other changes that were happening. Item number two is the psychology angle. I would say from psychology, we know that people can be more or less aggressive or passive in a relationship. And some personalities are also manipulative. I think about these things whenever I start a business project. I always try to map out the project and who's going to be involved with each part of it. And of course, I try to remember that, how am I presenting this? Am I being a little bit too pushy about things? Like if I want someone to take on a certain role or not? Well, that business concept is kind of a subset or a simplification of a marriage relationship. Marriage is much more complicated. And I think it's also because in each part or each role in a marriage, there's also going to be emotions that are attached to things. So, for example, who's going to earn the income for the family? And will the other feel bad because maybe they earned the income in the past, but not now? Also, as we've seen in the reading, some people who earn most of the income or more of the income, they feel that they have certain permissions that or privileges that go with that. And so that can be a part of the problem that has to get worked out. The literature talks about same-sex couples have challenges in this area as well. Item number three is finding balance. In traditional partnerships, each person might expect certain roles and responsibilities, but as we can see from one of the articles that we read for today, the Psychology Today article, it says that this works only for certain couples. That is, when they believe in traditional roles. And however, the article says that most couples today do prefer modern roles for their partnerships. And in those modern partnerships, women might express certain roles that were masculine in the past, such as problem-solving traits. The article also said that certain men might express feminine traits, such as emotional expressiveness in the relationship. So that's a new part of the equation as well. Item number 4 is communication. The suggested reading also talked about how communication and modern couples can make it easier for them if they practice that communication. For example, if they're comfortable with talking about certain topics all the time, then they gain a better understanding of each other, which leads to a good cycle of more communication and more understanding. This, of course, will help when obstacles come up in a partnership because two people are on the same page or on the same wavelength, as some people say. And that will help in dealing with those obstacles in the relationship. The item number 5, one of the articles talked about marriage and divorce rates. This is something that over the years I've always remembered hearing that the divorce rate was 50% or something dramatic like that. And I questioned it. I'd never really researched it. But in this research for this presentation, the CDC article from 2018 showed that the marriage rate was 6.5% per thousand. That's, people getting married. And then the divorce rate is 2.9% per thousand. That might account for the trend of about 50%, because if you divide 2.9 into 6.5, it comes out about 45% of those marriages are later dissolving. That could be the rate that we've heard about in the past. Now, the difficult topic of global issues. It's tough to talk about the topic of gender equality in marriages today. And yet in the news, we hear from around the world, there are countries who are far behind us in gender equality. We hear stories about honor killings, forced marriages, child marriages, and such. But I do have a couple of cases that are promising about where the future is going to take us. One case is called the New Family Laws in Tunisia. And this is a UN project that resulted in new family laws in that country, which define the rights of all citizens, not just men, but men and women. And they are actively working to take these laws towards a modern vision for Tunisian society. Another case is from India. I called it on the screen here, Changes in the Family Roles of India. This was interesting because in 2012, they did a policy experiment in the country of India where they talked to adolescent girls who had changed their family roles. Instead of just being the daughter of the family, these were young women who were now considering their greater role in society. And this happened because they were living in towns where women had taken on leadership roles for at least 2 election cycles. So the concept of a woman in leadership was changing these families. And I was glad to hear that this study was done, I think it was in about 500 villages and included about 8,000 adolescent girls. So that was a very promising note of changes that are happening. And finally, I'm going to wrap up before Candace speaks. Wrapping up my part of this is we have to ask ourselves, why are we talking about gender equality in marriage? It's not just about sharing the work and the responsibilities, but it also comes down to how do we promote happiness between ourselves and our partners? We're talking about life satisfaction here. So it's a very important, leads to a life fulfillment aspect. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Candace. And Candace is she has some slides of her own that she's prepared for this. Let's see. Candace, are you ready? Unmute yourself and let me know.
Yeah, I just had to put Maggie in the back bedroom because I thought she's barking and that will make everything crazy.
Who's Maggie, your roommate?
Yes.
Yeah,
My
the
dog.
the furry one, yeah.
The furry one. Okay, all right. So Dan, I'll tell you when to go ahead and put up the slides. Is that okay?
Sure, whenever you're
Okay.
ready.
All right, good. So a real kind of interesting thing happened this week. I was contacted by several of our female members, all mentioning something relative to the concept of voice, capital V, not small v, in relationships. And I thought that was really interesting to have that happen, kind of serendipity. So I thought maybe it might be a good idea to start with that. And then I'm going to go into our article. And then I'm going to speak to the concept of voice from a young girl's, child's perspective. So the last couple of weeks, I've been talking or speaking about the concept of voice, capital V. And I understand now that not everyone is familiar with the concept of voice. So I wanted to share my personal understanding, my definition, my personal experience with voice. Speaking is truly a part of voice, but it's definitely not the only aspect to voice. So to give you an example, one male individual said to me, but women are talking all the time. And that I may or may not agree with that. However, speaking or women talking to you is not voice. That is only a part of voice. So to me, voice is being able to share my thoughts, my opinions, my feelings. My voice is being able to have someone listen to me, to give my thoughts some consideration. My voice allows me to feel empowered, that I matter. When I don't have a voice, and there have certainly been periods in my life when I have not, I cater, I compromise without questioning, I walk on eggshells, I make excuses for others' poor or inappropriate behaviors, I bite my tongue, I walk away without words, I don't matter. And then one day, I removed myself from that situation, and someone asked me a very simple question. Where would you like to go for your birthday? And there I stand, embarrassed and in shock, because the truth is, I don't know. I took on someone else's wants, needs, and desires, and was no longer quite sure what mine were. And in that moment, I realized that I have lost myself. It happens quite insidiously, very small increments, quietly, very discreetly, and I don't even notice. I do the challenging work of fighting and clawing my way back to my life, and I arrive, and I make it. Shaken, bruised, maybe, but I make it. Voice allows me to have presence, and an essence that is uniquely mine, a separate identity that is not colored by anyone else. And now, Dan, if you could go ahead and put up the first slide. My article was An Equal Voice. Marriage is supposed to be equal. So I did something very different this time. So it's a good thing, but I also want to apologize. I would never put this much print on a slide. And generally when I have presented or spoken or shared, I have summarized some conceptual idea. These words were too powerful for me to insert my voice. So I'm just going to read them because I really want them to sink in. So you really understand from both a female and a male perspective what voice looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. Again, both for men and for women. There are millions of women in this world, strong women, who have somehow lost the who have somehow, through the perils of marriage and children, lost their equal voice. It begins almost accidentally, as it's easier to just do things yourself, not argue and move on than it is to dig in your heels. With so much to be done in a day's time, who has the time to stand around and argue over whose turn it is to take the trash out or put the baby to sleep? Then time zooms on, and you, like thousands of other women, find that your voice has been buried. It's been buried beneath your to-do list and a desire to make the world a happy place for everyone but yourself. You don't want the kids to hear you argue. You don't want your husband to be in a horrid mood. And you don't want to jeopardize your family, so snugly tucked into the life that you and you alone have made them. Slide 2. Both partners are supposed to have a voice, capital V, although it's a small v, for reasons much more complicated than possible for one article. Unions across the world are failing because one partner does not feel they deserve or are entitled to their equal voice. The longer the voice is silenced, the longer it goes without reckoning, the more difficult it is to regain. And the battle becomes an inward one that can threaten the health and the well-being of the person who doesn't speak. The sad part is that the responsibility is also dual, and the failing of the marriage or the partnership cannot be blamed on one person. While becoming the nagging stereotyped wife is not pleasant, it is she who decides the fight for her dignity is not worth it. And while the other person may benefit from the silence, they are slowly but surely losing someone they love with no real warning or control. There is always something about them that likes things quiet. Slide 3. When you speak, you should be heard. When you need to say something, you should be able to say it. When you are married, the playing field is level unless one person chooses to alter it. If it is altered, it can be fixed as long as both sides fight and play fair. Remaining silent is as unfair as throwing up muddy statements like, "I am the only one who does work around here." Choosing to ignore it, forge ahead, pray it will change, or engage in any other insignificant module for making change is catastrophic to all the reasons that silence prevails. Just like a tsunami, just because it isn't seen, isn't heard for a while, doesn't mean it isn't dangerous. In fact, it is perhaps the most dangerous thing known to man. What matters is that when someone turns their back or rolls their eye because their voice is buried, you invite it out rather than walk away feeling like a winner. Dan, you can go ahead and leave that slide up. So because I most of you know that in childhood, I truly did not have a voice. So it's been a long, long, hard journey. And because I believe that the concept of having a voice is best instilled, cultivated, or developed in childhood, I wanted to share a post that came across my table not too long ago. It's a situation we've probably all been in or known someone who has been in. I believe it is the responsibility of mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, and grandparents to help build that voice for our younger generation. So here's that post. A grown man looms behind my 3-year-old daughter. Occasionally, he will poke or tickle her, and she responds by shrinking, smaller and smaller with each unwanted advance. I imagine her trying to slight enough to slip out of her booster seat and slide under the table. When my mother views this scene, she sees playful taunting, a grandfather engaging with his granddaughter. May, my tone cuts through the din of a familiar family gathering together. She does not look at me. May, I start again. You can tell him no, May. If this isn't okay, you could say something like, Papa, please back up. I would like some space for my body. As I say those words, my stepfather leans in a little closer, hovering just above her head. His grin taunts me as my daughter accordions her 30-pound frame, hoping to escape his tickles and hot breath. I repeat myself with a little more force. She finally peeks up at me. Mama, can you say it? Surprise. A 3-year-old girl doesn't feel comfortable defending herself against a grown man. A man that has stated over and over that he loves her and cares for her, and yet stands here showing zero concern for her wishes about her own body. I ready myself for a battle. Papa, please back up. May would like space for her body. My voice is firm but cheerful. He does not move. Papa, I should not have to ask you twice. Please back up. May is uncomfortable. Oh, relax, he says, ruffling her wispy blonde hair. The patriarchy stands, patronizing me in my own damn kitchen. We're just playing. His southern drawl does not charm me. No, you were not playing. You were playing. She was not. She's made it clear that she would like some space. Now, please back up. I can play however I want to play with her, he says, straightening his posture. My chest tightens. The sun-bleached hair on my arms stand at attention as this man, who has been my father figure for more than 3 decades, enters the battle ring. No, you cannot play however you want with her. It's not okay to have fun with someone who does not want to play. He opens his mouth to respond to my rage, but my rage is palpable through my measured response. I wonder if my daughter can feel it. I hope she can. He retreats to the living room and my daughter stares up at me. Her eyes, a starburst of blue and hazel, shine with admiration for her mama. The dragon has been slayed for now. My own mother is silent. She refuses to make eye contact with me. This is the same woman who said nothing, who could say nothing, as her boss and her friends sexually harassed her for years. This is the same woman who married one of those friends. When my mother sees this scene, she sees her daughter overreacting. She sees me making a big deal out of nothing. Her concerns lie more in maintaining the status quo. and cradling my stepdad's toxic ego than protecting her shrinking 3-year-old granddaughter in front of her. When I view this scene, I am both bolstered and dismayed. My own strength and refusal to keep quiet is the result of hundreds, probably thousands of years, women being mistreated and their protests ignored. It is the result of watching my own mother suffer quietly at the hands of way too many men. It is the result of my own mistreatment and my solemn vow to be part of ending this cycle. It would be easy to see a little girl being taught that her wishes don't matter, that her body is not her own, and even people she loves will mistreat and ignore her. And that all of this is okay in the name of other people, men having fun. But what I see instead is a little girl watching her mama. I see a little girl learning that voice matters, that her wishes matter. I see a little girl learning that she's allowed and expected to say no. I see her learning that this is not okay. I hope my mom is learning something. Fighting the patriarchy, one grandpa at a time.